Hello.
Hi.
Oh,
Hey, how
Hi,
are you,
Patrick.
Patrick? Can you hear us?
yes, I can hear you all great.
Awesome. Thank you for being here with us today. Just a couple words before we begin. The purpose of this meeting is so that the committee to replace Alderperson Stephen Smith can meet with the candidates who placed their name forward before the deadline. Ask a set of questions. We have two candidates. We're going to ask both candidates the same questions in the same order. And we'll release the video online, and then the selection committee will meet at a later date to discuss and come up with a recommendation to Common Council. This is a process that's laid out in our city code. And in that code, whenever there's a vacancy for a council person, a three-person selection committee should make a nomination to the Common Council. That three-person committee will always include the mayor and the other member from the same ward. In this case, it's Graham Kersick, who is Stephen Smith's colleague there representing the fourth ward. And then another member of council is chosen by the mayor. I chose Duxon because the second ward abuts the fourth ward, has many of the similar challenges. I believe is the second densest ward after the fourth ward. And I just happen to know that Duxon and Steve Smith in particular saw eye to eye on a lot of things. So I thought he'd be an appropriate person to help choose who would fill out the remainder of that term. We're also joined by the city clerk, Julie Holcomb, and the city attorney, Ari Levine. They help us run all of the Common Council proceedings, make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble. So we got a list of questions, Patrick. I'll begin, and then we'll take turns asking them. The first question is, why are you interested in serving on the Common Council?
Yeah, so I guess I'll really quickly introduce myself. My name is Patrick Mehler. I'm 20 years old. I've lived in Ithaca for the past 2 years, and I've been a resident of Fourth Ward for the past year, and I will be a resident for this entire coming year as well. So I'm interested in running for the Common Council for two main purposes. And that first one is I really want to rekindle the fire and rebuild that bridge between the city and the community. And part of what I especially want to focus on just for a second is I am a student at Cornell University, and in a city of 60,000 people, you have 23,000 students. And in that city, there's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, between the students and the city as a whole in getting involved with local government. We have that disconnect even with our student government, and we have that disconnect even with the federal government, but there's really an opportunity here to create and rekindle that fire between, I think, the students and within this community and within the council as their community. You know, we look at this, and I look at this as my home, and this is a home that we want to take care of and a one that we really want to work with each other for. And so I hope that my time on the council and why I'm interested in serving on the council can be one of which a new era has started of bringing back the young voices into the community and really having that heard. I think the second part of that is then helping everybody, you know, beyond the communication parts and getting people involved. I do really want to help the people in my community. I've, you know, dedicated the past 2 years in my time in Ithaca to getting as many folks engaged with the voter process, with civic engagement, and getting involved with the communities as possible. And I think once you get people involved, that's when you really get to see quality of life improvements, and you really get to see people live better lives. And so my hope, beyond just rekindling and getting communication working again, is to start to help folks exactly. You know, my goal as a representative is not to say, this is what I think and this is what we're going to do, but to listen to the concerns of everybody and present those concerns to the council and advocate on their behalf. And so my first hope is to rekindle the fire and get folks involved again. And then once they're involved, improve their lives and really help them out.
Thank you.
Okay.
I believe it's Graham.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, so this appointment goes through until December next year. And so this question really is give us a sense of what you hope to achieve if you're appointed to the position to fill Steve's seat.
Yep, so I understand that the role is for about a year and change. It expires at the end of December of 2022. And what I hope to achieve is really those two goals that I was interested in. The first is community engagement. I think even if I only have a year, I can really respark that flame in getting people involved with our city government and getting people connected once again. You know, I spend a lot of time getting people involved with our student government, and even just a couple of months of my involvement in working with close friends of mine, organizations of mine, we see 33% increases in voter turnout, and we see people really getting engaged again. So within this year, the first thing I hope to do is really spark the community engagement and get the ball rolling so that it continues going long after I'm retired, is what I like to say. But the second part, I think, is really housing. I myself currently live in the Hans Beta house within the fourth ward. I lived here last year as well. And I've been working out housing with my friends. We're trying to figure out where we're going to live next year. And we're honestly a little late to the game. We're trying to figure out what to do for last year. And, some of us, including myself, have some financial restraints, and trying to think of that. The first thing that comes to my mind is finding more affordable housing to protect both the students in the fourth ward, but the residents and the more permanent residents of the fourth ward too. What I absolutely wouldn't want to see happen is folks being pushed out of their homes that their families have owned for generations because students who can afford, the uber wealthy students can afford high rent end up kicking them out. So I think one of the biggest things to work on, and what I hope to achieve is even just in a year, is to really get as much affordable housing as possible, both to protect the residents of the fourth ward who may not be here in 20 years, and especially to protect the residents of the fourth ward who have been here already for 20 years and will be here for another 20.
Thank you.
Hey, Patrick. So what experience do you have serving with boards, committees, or any other types of decision-making groups?
Yeah, so I can start. I mentioned it very briefly with sort of voter turnout, but I'm one of the founders and the president for Cornell Votes. I'm very happy. I see, Savante and Duxon, you both are very kind enough to help us with their National Voter Registration Day event last year. And we hope to have you guys again for this year. You'll receive some communication from friends of mine shortly. But besides that, I have really thrown myself into the different boards across the university and trying to get people civically engaged. We started with 4 students who were really interested and wanted to get people to turn out. We exploded into 50 in just a couple of weeks. And even a year and a half later, we're still at 50 members who are all wildly engaged and work with hundreds of other orgs, trying to get people to turn out to vote and working with as many people as possible. We did such a great job in getting voter turnout to come up with the boards that we were managing there that they asked us to step in with our student assembly. They asked us to come and help with student government. They had the lowest voter turnout in 50 years. And, they called me in to say, hey, we know that you're the voting guy. We know that you're the community engagement guy. You get people turned out, you get people excited. Can you come in and step in? And so, I offered my help and I stepped in, and we saw a 33% increase in voter turnout. I mean, you can't ask for really better results of knowing where your community ties are and knowing how to manage boards, knowing how to manage committees, and not just get the most out of people, but have people get the most out of me and have people get the most out of the work that they're doing. And so, I'm very thankful for this semester. I'm returning again to serve as the director of elections. They were at least a little happy with the results they had last time. So I'm coming back again to manage their elections and serve on their board again. But I'm very heavily involved throughout tons of different boards in the community. But whatever I touch, I really try to not just engage them immediately, but make sure that once I step aside, folks are ready to keep being engaged and ready to take over as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, next question. What experience do you have working with the public?
Yeah, so, besides the community engagement I've had specifically with Cornell and with Ithaca, we've done a lot of work with the Tompkins County League of Voters. We've done a lot of work with the Hanger Theater and other groups trying to increase civic engagement here in Ithaca. This past summer, I was actually working for the New York State Senate, and I was doing work back home in Yonkers, working with Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins and Shelley Mayer, who's my state senator. And I was helping to do legislation. And one of the first things I learned in legislation is you can't get to writing legislation until you've talked to the public about what they want the legislation to look like. And besides that, I really was helping with some consumer finance stuff. And so I specifically was looking at GPR cards, which are general purpose reloadable cards. It's a very niche form how people pay for things, but it's an incredibly necessary point for people who don't have access to traditional banking. And a lot of these big bank companies throughout the state were ripping people off in the most absurd ways. You'd have only $50 in your account that you use just to get enough food to get you through the week. And they're charging you 10% and then a $5 fee for using the ATM one extra time than you were supposed to. And so I spent, an entire month before even getting to writing the legislation, talking with community members, hearing the stories of the public, hearing, hey, how are you screwed over by Visa and Chase? And how are you screwed over by these companies? So that we go to regulate them when we go to work with them to bring these prices down, we have your stories. Because the first thing in working with the public, and especially as being as representative, is to elevate them. It's not my job to say, this is what I think. It's my job to say, this is what the community thinks. And I'm here to present those ideas.
Great, thanks. So next question, Patrick. What do you think the biggest challenges facing the city of Ithaca right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two main challenges, and they're sort of what I spoke about why I was interested as well. I think the first one is communication. There's Stephen Smith when he steps down, over a month ago at this point. I don't think anybody in the fourth ward, at least in my immediate community, knew. In the West Campus community specifically, which includes, Hans Beta House, Becker House, Rose House, and Becker House, that was 1,300 constituents who I don't think a single one of them knew what was going on. And so I think the first, sort of challenge, but also opportunity that we face is communication. I think it's really making sure that folks are tapped into their community, not just within the university and within the local communities in the college area, but with the city as a whole. I think people, especially during this past election, we see they get involved with the federal stuff. We see they sometimes get involved with the state stuff, and people get invested that way. But, the city is where you see the immediate results occur. And so I think really making sure that people are aware of what's going on, and not just being aware, then making sure that they have the space and the avenues and the accessibility to comment on that and to make sure that they are able to get their points across. I do think the second issue, and I mentioned this before, is housing. It's a little crazy to me that I have to figure out a year ahead of time and commit, almost $8,000 before I even know what the building is going to look like where I'm going to live for next year. And so I think finding ways on the council is the direct avenue for where we can get more affordable housing, where we deal with zoning, where we deal with construction, where we deal with just building up College Town, even building around Stewart Ave and West Campus, making sure that we have affordable housing for students, and not just affordable housing for students, but affordable housing for the permanent community members especially. We don't want anybody to be forced to leave their homes. We don't want anybody to be forced out of their communities either. And so, making sure that folks are aware of what's going on and making sure that they're able to communicate. And then once they communicate those issue overs and say, hey, the one I've heard it most in my very brief door knocking and trying to hear as much as possible in the past couple of weeks is that housing. It's that people either don't know where they're going to live next year, or they feel like they're paying too much, or they're not getting enough, and just making sure that people feel at home in their homes and in their community.
Thanks. Yeah.
So the other side of that question, what do you think is the biggest opportunity in Ithaca right now?
I think those both are exactly that. I think they're both, challenge is just an opportunity that hasn't been recognized yet, in the sort of sense that housing is one right here. I mean, I know we have the student agencies building being built, and there's lots of construction going on College Ave as well, but housing is really an opportunity to partner both with the students and with the residents of the fourth ward, to partner with Cornell as a university and as a body that does house a lot of folks in this ward, and to work with everybody to get affordable housing. I think that the biggest thing that we can do in terms of the opportunity is go for it, is create it, and then make sure that people are aware of what's going on. I think one of the biggest things that we've learned, at least I've learned in my couple years in civic engagement, is that the people who have the resources are the ones who are going to speak the loudest. The people who have the time, the energy, the money, who don't have to take care of a young child, who don't have to go to work, who don't have to go to a night class, those are the ones who always get their voice thrown out there. It's reaching those people who don't have those resources, reaching the people who don't have the time and the money to get their points across. And so making sure that we're communicating with them, that is a massive opportunity right there, to hear what people in the ward are thinking, to hear what people in the city are thinking. And then it turns into even bigger opportunity of saying, yes, housing is the thing I care about. Great, let's solve that. But once you open the communication opportunity, so many more are going to present themselves. I learned a lot in the past month and speaking with as many residents as I could and trying to hear what their concerns were. And the only way I can serve as a representative and the way I can best do my job is to keep hearing that, and to keep hearing what they're concerned about, to keep hearing what the immediate pressing issue is. And so my hope is that this first opportunity is communication, it's community engagement, it's getting really right back to grassroots and chatting and talking and being connected to as many people as possible. And once that opportunity has really been taken advantage of, housing is one of my top priorities. Like, that's the first one you get to, but then every single opportunity that the community is excited about, that they're engaged in, that's the next opportunity to go for as well.
Thank you. Next question is, how do you plan on connecting your constituents to city government?
Yeah, I think there's, I have a couple of plans to do that. I think one of the first things, and even it's a little cliche, is just promoting yourself and being accessible. I think making sure that you recognize, okay, here's the map within the fourth ward, here are the streets that are covered. I understand that this is a full, it's a part-time job that I intend to treat full-time, and I intend to dedicate everything to and say, I need to come and chat with any person who is willing to talk with me within this forum. So I think the first step is speaking to all those people, even if it's as simple as, not a campaigning, but just they're not just saying, hey, I'm your representative. I'm here to chat with you. Let's tell me what your concerns are. I want to get those across. And then even more, it's a little further cliche in sort of academic sense, but having open office hours, being accessible both, in person and being available in the center of the ward to say, hey, I'm here. I'll buy you coffee. Just come chat with me, and I'm more than happy to hear all of your ideas. But providing, sort of accessible ways as well. There are lots of folks in the ward who work and can't take out, 4 to 6 p.m. every Tuesday of the week. And so making sure, hey, here are my emails. Here's how you can contact me. Tell me what works for you, and I will make sure that I have time to talk to you. So I think the first thing is, yes, just the self-promotion of not just myself as a representative, but of the city too. I think one of the things I'd hope to work with the city fund is almost a little campaign of ourselves to say, hey, Ithaca is, you see the Ithaca is gorgeous shirts. You see people saying, you see people wearing those, but Ithaca is more than gorgeous. We're also, we're a community that really provides a home to both permanent and non-permanent residents. And I think promoting one, or myself as a representative to say, I'm here to represent you, and I will be as accessible and here as possible, whether it is through, in-person office hours or hosting weekly or monthly different town halls to get people's ideas. But I think it's promoting ourselves as a city too. There's lots to pat ourselves on the back for. And we ought to let people know that, hey, we're here to watch your back. We're here to protect you as Ithacans and as residents of the city. And so I think, beyond myself as a representative, promoting the city as a whole and making sure that they understand that we are here to serve them and we are here to help.
Thanks, Patrick. So this might be a long list, but what do you love most about the fourth ward?
It was, I laughed at it this morning when Julie sort of sent me this question. The first thing that actually popped into my mind the other night, I was watching Thor Ragnarok, and Odin says this whole thing before he dies. He goes, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. And it was sort of the first thing that popped into my mind when I was thinking about the fourth ward. I was thinking, lines are being redrawn, and yes, there is a specific section of this is the fourth ward, but the people are who make up the fourth ward, right? It's not just the residents, it's not just the people who, live on Stewart Ave and who live off of Eddy Street and Catherine Street, but it's the people who work in Jack's and work in Dos Amigos and work and live in the ward. And so when the first thing I think of is what do I love most about this place, about this specific section, it truly is the people. It truly is the community that I live among. It's truly among, the same exact order I get from the same restaurants every Friday night. It really is the people who are around in this ward that what I love, and that's who makes it up.
Great, thank you.
Do you have any questions for us?
I'd actually would love to ask you guys some. I mean, in every way, you're the experts. You've served on it. I'd love to hear, what do you guys think a successful councilman looks like? What do you think a successful alderperson who is doing their job at the best looks like?
Yeah, no, Graham, if you want to take that
Sure.
on.
I mean, we've talked a little bit, Patrick, in the past, but I think, as you said, I mean, it's challenging to connect with people, and I really appreciated what you had said about your plans to connect with constituents. But the other important aspect is, you're one of 10 people, and I think communicating well with colleagues, talking with them, that's what I've certainly appreciated. You obviously have your perspective, even if you go out into the public and get a lot of perspectives. It's always, to my mind, really enlightening to hear the perspectives of colleagues on council. You come in with perhaps some certain ideas or some plans, and the discussions are really respectful, but they're also very informative. And I think being able to work in that group, we've had a number of big successes during my terms in office, and I'm hoping that will obviously continue. But I think for me, that's a key aspect of being on council, is being able to communicate and work with colleagues to get some legislation passed.
Thank you so much.
I would agree with that. I served the fourth ward on council before becoming mayor, and Graham's absolutely right. It's important to have ideas and have energy and to be creative. And it took me a while, because I was also 20 years old. It took me a while to learn that all the good stuff happens in collaboration. That by working with your council members, working with the staff, is how you're able to actually deliver for your constituents. Communication is also important, something you've touched on, and Graham mentioned being able to communicate to your constituents, finding them where they live. It's sometimes quite literally finding them on Stewart Ave or on College Ave. But if they're on Twitter or if they're on Instagram, wherever they are, finding a way to reach them with city issues that are of importance to them is really important. Any other question, or Duxon, did you want to?
I agree with all that. I was going to add that another important thing is to connect your constituents with city services or the people who can solve their problems. In one sense, sometimes we just have to listen. Sometimes people don't need a solution necessarily, but they want to be heard. But other times there is, in fact, someone who can solve their problems or help them. There's a lot of that as well.
Thank you so much.
Great. So Patrick, there is now time for a closing statement if you'd like to make one.
Yeah, I love to make one. Actually, if I could ask one more question?
Of course.
Of course. I'd love to hear, is there anything I can clarify about myself or would like to speak to a little more before I close? Anything that anybody present would like to ask or clarify, I'm more than happy to do so.
I just want to be sure that, you mentioned that you intend to live in the fourth ward for the remainder of the term. You don't have your housing set yet, was that right? You're still looking for housing?
Correct, yes. I have intentionally, I do have the option to stay in Beta should off-campus housing not work out, but I've been waiting a little bit on this to see where it's going, to see if I can afford $100 extra a month to be in more center of the ward and be as centered to people as possible.
Understood. Just
But
want
I
to make sure.
fully intend to live in the ward, yes.
Great. I don't have any further questions. Graham, Duck?
Yeah, I mean, good luck with the housing. I know the fourth ward very well, and it is tough. I mean, Ari can weigh in here, but I think it's a legal requirement that to serve, you need to be a resident. So,
certainly so, yes.
Yeah. So hopefully you can find something.
Yeah, I will. I certainly will.
Yeah, that was actually why I had to move out of the fourth, because I could no longer afford it once I became mayor. So, okay, great. So, Patrick, the floor is yours.
Yeah, if I can close, I'd really love to leave you with two things. And I think the first thing I like to ask for is your trust. I'd like to ask that you trust a student, first off, to come back onto the council. I know it's been a while since, like Savante for yourself was on, having a student representative within the fourth ward of the council. I ask that you trust a student. I know that I'm young, that comes with a lot of passion, that comes with a lot of energy, but that does also come with, I understand, the ability to grow and the readiness to work and collaborate with colleagues and to learn more in that sphere. So I first ask that, students are an integral part of this community and a part of Ithaca. And I ask that you trust a student. And the second part of that is I ask that you trust me as a student. And I ask that you trust Patrick Mehler to be your student and to be your fourth ward councilman. And the reason for that is I have dedicated the past 2 years of my time, and I intend to dedicate however more years I am here as well, to my community and to civic engagement. I think the biggest thing that we really can do is get the ball running and understanding that, hopefully 50 years down the road, or I'm all retired, I'm not the last student, or there's a big gap in between where we don't have student voices involved with the city. And I ask that I, as somebody who has very intentionally connected myself both within the city and within the university and within the county and state, as somebody who is interconnected with this community. And I ask that you trust the student, and I ask that you trust me as that student to be the next older person for the fourth ward and to be all of y'all's representative. So, and especially a thank you to Savante, Duck, Graham, Julie, and Ari. Thank you all so much for having me. I sincerely appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity in every single way.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you. We appreciate you putting yourself forward and taking the time to meet with us, especially in this virtual format.
Of course.
So we appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Patrick.
very much.
Thank you, Patrick.
Of course. Enjoy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Katie.
Hi,
Can you hear
Katie.
us?
Hello.
Yes, great, okay. My screen went all funky for a second. But
Oh, good. Happy that you're here with us. I'll say a few words and then we'll dive into the process. So we are here today, the selection committee, to fill the vacancy left by the resignation of Alderperson Stephen Smith. According to the code, a selection committee should be made up of 3 people: the mayor, the other person from the 4th ward, and another council person of the mayor's choosing. I chose Duxon as he is both the council person for the 2nd ward, which is physically very close to the 4th, but also shares a lot of characteristics with the 4th ward as well. We have a set of questions. There's one other candidate. We'll interview that other candidate today as well, ask the same questions in the same order. And both candidates received the questions this morning via email, just so a slight head start. And yeah, sound good?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll jump in. I'll be asking the first question, then Graham, then Duck, and then we'll repeat. So Katie, the first question is, why are you interested in serving on the Common Council?
Well, to me, local government is really like the key political unit. I work for a national climate nonprofit, and so we're talking about federal climate policy all the time. And the thing that I've really taken away from that like federal policy talk over the last year is that really the federal government can like assign priorities, and it can like get together funding, but it's really up to like the local governments to decide what goes where. Like, you know, the federal government can't decide like where a flood channel needs to be in Ithaca. And so it's the local governments need to be the ones that are most responsive to the needs of the community and can make huge impacts on people's day-to-day quality of life through just like little things here and there, like what their walk to work looks like. And so so that and also that because like city governments have like a manageable sized constituency, like you can understand most of the like general feelings of people and like what they want out of their city in a city, whereas in the United States there's so many people in so many different situations. Like coming up with a policy that serves so many people is always going to be a massive compromise. And even though there are differing opinions and differing priorities and competing priorities at the city level, you're faced with a much smaller constituency. And I think that that's really valuable for achieving improvements in equity and achieving like things that are really specific and beneficial. And I think for me personally also, I love Ithaca. I moved here for college and couldn't leave because I liked it too much. And I really want to put time and effort into this community. And it's a community where we like have the opportunity to try ambitious policies in public safety and climate and city planning. And I think in kind of going through what kinds of opportunities like I as a person have in this community, I think that my analytical and strategic thinking, my interest in research and like public discussion leads me to think that like a policy space would be better for me than an ideological space.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Katie. So this appointment runs until December 2022. So in that time, what do you hope to achieve if you're appointed?
Yeah, so because it's like a kind of a mid-length appointment. Okay, wait, you said until the end of 2022?
Yes.
Okay, I was under the impression it was until, oh, it's 2021. I'm so sorry. I really thought it was 2020. Still, time is really so confusing to me. Since this is such a short appointment, I don't want to like come into this with like ambition about like I have these 50 things that I want to do in the city and we're gonna like flip everything in that time. I know things take time, especially doing things like with the like doing things right by the public and taking in feedback and stuff. So mostly my goal is to be a like a thoughtful and responsive person on the council, listening and bringing in information on things that are already rolling. I think like especially in kind of this time where like the green building policy was just implemented and or is like it was just passed, it's in the process of being implemented. We're looking forward to the existing building policy as far as energy code changing and efficiency changes. I think that is something that I'm really interested in being involved in and in making it like in making it strong and also making it approachable for both small and large developers in Ithaca who want to like remodel their homes or like build new apartment complexes that could house the growing population. And so that's a big priority for me. I think also in particular with Ward 4, we're seeing the like big developments come up. And so having like I would look forward to making sure that those go well, that they have community benefits to Ward 4, and that they like are beneficial to like the wide range of people, like student and non-student, homeowner and renter through in the ward.
Thank you. Thanks.
So what experience do you have serving with boards, committees, and other decision-making groups?
So my first board was, I was on the board of directors of the Cornell Daily Sun. And so that's the like, there's the board of editors, and then there's also the board that like manages the company. And so we were kind of juggling big decisions. We were talking about whether or not to make the company a nonprofit. There was some kind of big stuff happening there. But it was a year appointment. And so I think on boards, I'm always surprised by how long it takes to get situated on a board, I think. And another board that I started serving on at the beginning of this year is the board of the Human Services Coalition of Tompkins County. And in that board, I'm still like learning what the processes are. I'm still learning about the organization. I've been serving on the visioning committee, trying to develop a medium-term plan for the organization. Yeah, so I think I would say those boards have been particularly like discussion based and like a internal discussion, but they don't have like the public input the way that like a city board would or a government board would. And I think a decision-making group that had more of that. I'm sorry, my like mouth is getting so dry.
It's all good. Take your time.
A board that has had more like public influence would be the Sun editorial board, which I also served on for 3 years. And the Sun's editorial board has to deal with a lot more of the like community input. We get a lot of the letters to the editors, both the ones that like are supposed to be published and the ones that are just like, I'm really angry about this. And so those require more of coming into those conversations with like with the opinion of lots of people who aren't there. and bringing forth their concerns with grace and curiosity and not like a fighting instinct.
Great. Thank you. It's actually related to the next question, which is, what experience do you have working with the public?
Yeah, I would say in particular at The Sun, I was the editor, I was the associate editor, so I managed the opinion section and all the letters to the editor. I think the goal of any journalism institution is to be a very publicly accountable institution and to like be really accurate, to know your stuff, to have your research behind you, and then to also like be willing to hear it if you're wrong. And so I am used to fielding angry emails and phone calls and to trying to respond to them very kindly and like with a willingness to learn. And like adjusting things as needed. I mean, I think like we wrote some editorials and in my time there that like were bad, and we had to like take feedback and rewrite them. So I think that was a lot of learning of working with as an institution of public accountability there. My other working with the public like experience that I want to talk about is I worked at the COVID testing center at the mall last fall, and I was the person who would swab your nose. And so I talked to hundreds of Ithacans every day and had to build a level of trust with them very quickly and to perform everyone's favorite medical procedure, the tickling of your brain. And I think that like that really showed me like how much you could like build a rapport with someone in such a short period of time. And the basically like that if you like come to something with the right energy, that people are willing to like to share with you what their intentions are, what they want out of something, even if it's just a test swab. And like it also brought into me like a willingness to talk to people coming with all sorts of different like opinions, all sorts of anger. A lot of people were there because they like had to, because their boss told them, and so there's like there's a lot of motivations there, and I think that's true in just public conversation in general.
Great, thank you. And I'll just say, I can relate as somebody who wrote several bad Cornell Sun editorials my time on the editorial board. I can relate.
And Katie, thank you. I remember doing many tests, a couple at the mall as well, because of being a Cornell. And yeah, it's you really rely on the people there to help you. So thank you for doing that. So the next question for you, what do you think the biggest challenges facing the city of Ithaca right now?
Yeah, I think that most of the challenges are kind of like double-edged swords, or no, I feel like that's the wrong analogy, are like two sides of a coin. That's a better one. Of like there's the growing population and the economic expansion in the city has been bringing in a lot of benefits. It also there is a lot of displacement, and I think that like having like the challenge is finding out how to allow this expansion and create these economic benefits for the city, while also like making sure that people still have a place to live, who've lived in the city for a long time and who work in the city and who are members of the community here. And another one is the outsized influence of the academic institutions on the community. And they, like Cornell and Ithaca College, benefit a lot from the resources, the culture, the labor, the sidewalks, the everything in the city, from Ithacans and from the city government, and could contribute more to it. And like Ithaca also benefits a lot from having both like from the people and from the sense of place. The sense of place is very built up by these academic institutions. And I think like something that like I personally experienced last year was a really tough time finding jobs outside the university that would pay rent in Ithaca. Like I searched for months, I couldn't find one. I found a remote job. And I mean, part of it was last year, but you know, there's that. I think particularly in the fourth ward, there's this like challenge, not like a challenge in the negative way, but of like deciding how to like continue this like growth with new buildings, this like Catherine and college development and the falling of the College Town Innovation District, and like just so many new buildings going up on and around College Ave, while, and also like the like traffic and walking infrastructure in College Town is really hard to navigate. I think it's really dangerous. I bike everywhere, and like I always feel like I'm gonna get hit by a car in College Town, and like in Upper College Town, I mean. So I think that there are some big challenges there. I think the challenge of reimagining public safety is certainly like a big contentious thing in Ithaca, and I think one of the like benefits, or like one of the things that I like try to keep in mind with it, is that it's remarkable that so much of the city is so willing to like broadly reimagine what public safety and policing are like in the city, and like that is something that we like shouldn't like take for granted, is that there is like an energy to change. But I do think that the specifics of it are hugely contentious. People are like extremely intent on getting like exactly what they imagine public safety to be like. So I think finding the balance of a bunch of like really strong opinions and like different interests also is really challenging there. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, no.
There's a lot of things.
You've listed quite a few of the big challenges for sure in the city. So thank you, Katie. Yeah, that's great.
And you touched on a little bit of this in your answer, but what are some of the opportunities in Ithaca, the biggest opportunities that you see that Ithaca has?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said that a lot of this is like, it's like a little bit of both. Like the current population group and the population growth in the future, maybe with more people like me who didn't want to leave Ithaca and got a remote job just to stick around. Like, is this like big opportunity to like have a like even more vibrant, even more buzzing, prosperous community, and like also with the green building policy, with the future improvement or the future like ratcheting up of the requirements for it, is this opportunity to like really lead as far as green development, and to like work with community groups to figure out PUDs or planned unit developments that like feed back into the community and achieve real benefits. And this economic growth, I think, can be a real opportunity to redistribute benefits throughout the city, especially if like displacement is, or like preventing displacement is a priority, and that the expanded tax base is used to fund social services and community benefits. Yeah, I think also like as I said before, the willingness to reimagine public safety in the community, even though it's contentious, I do think that is a really big opportunity, and like sets up Ithaca to have a really promising new public safety system that'll keep people safer, and also could be a model for other cities that are working to make their community safer as well.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's my turn. I thought it was Dixon. How do you plan on connecting your constituents to city government?
Yeah, I think the the first place that I look for this kind of stuff is to like start with community groups that are already like creating a sense of that are already like connecting people and bringing people to the same place. And so starting with things like the College Town Neighborhood Council and participating in local events and starting conversations there, you know, like milling around, starting one-on-one conversations with people and figuring and just kind of like building that rapport. Part of it's just like being available and like being responsive to email and phone calls. I was oh no, I'm sorry, I was planning on talking about this at this point. My work is in digital organizing, and so I do feel like that's a big part of like how I imagine like coming up with conversations with people is connecting with them on social media through like Facebook groups, through like the Mutual Aid Tompkins Facebook group is huge and lots of people use it. Nextdoor, like I think, and just and like email listservs. There's like I think that there's a lot of ways to go through like groups of people who already exist and to connect with people that way. And then I think just like being open, being like graceful and kind and curious about things, and then trying to reduce barriers for people. So that's like for people connecting with me, but then also to like actively bring those concerns to the government spaces, to encourage people to do that and to try to reduce barriers to them bringing themselves to meetings, to like, you know, reaching out to like if there are like staff members in the city that like are like have that issue, like connecting them that way if that's appropriate. So we're going to learn about what's, you know, how things are done around here, but and then doing things like bringing written comments of constituents to meetings if they can't make it in person, and stuff like that.
Great, thank you, Katie. So you've mentioned some of the challenges of biking in the Fourth Ward, but what do you love most about the Fourth Ward?
Well, I really love just like the people. I can like never go on a walk or a bike ride without running into someone I know pretty much. And I feel really lucky to like live in a place with so many people, with people that I know, people that I've like gone to school with or that I've done community programs with, or that I just like met at a store and we kind of say hi every now and then. Growing up, I lived in a super suburban community, like no sidewalks. I couldn't walk to my friends' houses, and it's super isolating. I think that living in a place that is like this social is a like, I'm really grateful for it. And I just like one of the things that I want to do most in the city is to like make sure that people like have those opportunities, and to like make it in like to just to make it so that like within the town, like it's safe to like go around, there's social places to be in the Fourth Ward. And and so prioritizing like a physical community that's safe and social is key. I also think it's really kind of magical of like the like process of people like coming into their first homes, where it's like they're like living outside of their parents' house, they're not living in a dorm anymore, there's no one that's like, you have to do this now, like, you know, you don't have a bedtime, you don't have an RA like watching you, and I know like watching me and my friends like go through that and like buying our first kitchen sets and like cooking for ourselves and having people over for dinner parties, like that is something that's like is cool about the community. And I will say though that like when I started thinking about this question earlier today, one of the things that like took me a second was that I do a lot of the things that I love most about Ithaca, I go out of the Fourth Ward to do. And so like I'm pretty sure that there's no public park in the Fourth Ward. Like there's like some of the Cascadilla Trail is in the Fourth Ward, and then the South Hill Recway is right next to it, but there's no like actual public park anywhere in the Fourth Ward, I'm pretty sure. And it is like there's no protected bike lanes. It is kind of dangerous to walk around sometimes, I feel. So yeah.
Thanks, Katie. There is a tiny, tiny park right by the Dryden Road garage. There's just a little tiny bit of grass with you probably walked by it and didn't realize, oh, it's actually some green space there. But
Yeah.
There's a
yeah,
bench.
it's a challenge.
There's one
we're
bench.
lucky to have
There's-
Cascadilla Gorge there. But
Yes,
Yeah,
there's
the gorge is
literally
certainly-
one bench. I think my parking space park was a bit bigger than the one in College. But I actually have enjoyed the one in College Town, and you're right. Yeah, a real need. Duxon.
Thank you for answering all that. I also grew up in the burbs. I will never go back.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us as older people?
Yeah. I mean, look, like to any of you, what do you see as the like big things that are priorities that are moving over the next year? What do you think is going to be contentious or like difficult?
Yeah, I think that you certainly put your finger on it. Housing is the biggest problem in the city of Ithaca right now. The fact that there's not enough of it, it's not affordable, and the quality is not high enough. The urgent need for us to follow through on the Green New Deal, so to get to carbon neutrality as fast as possible and make sure that transition is just and equitable. Reimagining public safety is an urgent public need and obviously a point of controversy that council will have to negotiate. The budget, figuring out how to spend, we've got too little money and too much to do. So that's always a tough thing, figuring out what we can spend on. And the fifth thing I would say is, which is related to all of the above, is our actual infrastructure. Got to fill potholes, we got to build bike lanes, have to build more sidewalks, better parks. But that's just, those are just the 5 things that I think about most often at 2 in the morning when I wake up. There's sometimes I've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on the brain, but those are the top 5.
Thank you.
Graham or Duck, do you have any?
yeah, those are the really big ones, and they create other problems in terms of maintaining a diverse community. Housing obviously critical to that, and so yeah, those ones that Savante outlined are the real key kind of big problems that and keeping I think keeping the community engaged in those, because obviously people's attention, they've got full-time jobs, got families, keeping them engaged, I think, is also a challenge, because those are very complex problems. They're not solved with one meeting. And that's a challenge that we always face in terms of, keeping the community engaged with those longer, more complex problems. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo what Savante and Graham have said. Housing really is number one, and it's because I think it intersects so many things. There's definitely a sustainability component. Even though we're at the city, we have an interest in keeping the region more sustainable, which means not building in new green spaces and encouraging building here where it's dense and people can walk and bike. As a sustainability component, has housing as a public safety component, and that people who are housed don't have to, are able to take care of their basic needs and maybe not go outside the norm to achieve those needs. But yeah, I think a lot of people may agree that those are the priorities, but like Graham said, there are so many disparate opinions on everything. And even though you see some of the loudest voices at our meetings, there are other people who will only write us because they don't feel comfortable speaking in public. And so we get such a spectrum of opinions that you do have to have your own values too, because it's hard sometimes to accommodate everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah, so thank you, Katie. I don't know if you have any more questions. If not, there is time for a closing statement if you'd like to make one.
I do have one more question, and it's again for any of you. I think, like, what was the joining city government? Like, what do you think was the most difficult, like, learning curve to have, like, about how it works or what is possible or something like that?
Good question. And I was fortunate enough to have a longer runway than you would have. I spent about a year running, so I got to go to a lot of the meetings. Even still, there was all the alphabet soup. There's the jargon, the acronyms, all the different various acts and laws and departments that you've got to learn. It can feel like everybody on council speaking a slightly different language. But the bigger learning curve was figuring out how to actually gain support for the things I wanted to pass, which was I learned the long way. It took me a couple of years to figure this out. What is that I've got to figure out what my colleagues want to pass and what I can work with them on. So learning how to build coalitions, I think, was the was the biggest learning curve.
Mhm. Thank you.
I mean, I'd probably add, it may sound a bit kind of boring, but the budget each year is really complicated to understand that. We don't have a lot of opportunities for innovation because a lot of the budget is already committed. But trying to understand that, it takes some time to become familiar with how that impacts, not only the city and the public, but also staff. I mean, we have a great city staff. And the budget's decisions that council makes has a significant impact not only on the whole community but on city staff as well. And of course, there's never quite enough to do everything we want. So it is challenging to go through this list of priorities and try and come up with the best balanced decision, as Savante says, working with colleagues to try and achieve the best outcome we can within the constraints that we have, which are significant, I think.
Piece I'll add is it can be, or it was at least for me, hard to parse out exactly the lines of your role. And so like you, I want to advocate for bike lanes, but it mostly is advocacy because we don't make that decision. Board of Public Works makes that decision. That's a different volunteer board. And there are a lot of, as council members, we don't order staff around, nor should we, but we do have influence. So kind of navigating your role, it's practical effects.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Nope, that's all I had.
Awesome. Great, Katie. Well, thanks for taking the time today. Would you like to say anything in closing?
Yeah, just thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I'm excited to be considered for this. And I'm just trying to approach this with a sense of humility. I don't know everything, but I'm bringing a commitment to working hard to educate myself as much as I can through both research and public engagement, and trying to, parse all of the different ideas and all of the different opinions, and come out of it with a community where people can live happily and be safe. And yeah, that's my thoughts. And so thank you very much for
Much
taking the time to talk to me.
Katie, truly, thank you. Thank you for coming forward, putting your name in and volunteering to serve the city. It's really appreciated. So we've got another meeting next week, which we'll discuss and then pass our recommendation on to Common Council. So we will be in touch. Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you to everyone. We'll both stop the recording and end the meeting now so that any discussion will happen in an open meeting down the road.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Katie.
much.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right. Thanks, Graham. Thanks.